Okay, so we've reviewed the rhetorical situation and what that means for analyzing the texts or the arguments of others. Now I want to go through and look at rhetorical strategies. These are sometimes called rhetorical devices or rhetorical techniques that authors use in order to organize their work and to make their arguments more effective. So essentially, these are things, these are devices, these are strategies, these are techniques that you are going to look for when you read someone's writing. So let's talk really quickly about what a rhetorical strategy is. So we know that rhetoric is essentially the use of language or the method a writer or speaker uses to communicate their ideas to an audience. And we know that a strategy essentially is, what is a strategy? A strategy is a plan. It's a course of action that we take when we want to reach a goal. So a rhetorical strategy is a specific approach or a specific plan, a specific approach that a writer uses in order to achieve a purpose. So we talked in our review of the rhetorical situation about a purpose. All writing has a purpose. It's the reason why we choose to communicate with someone. And we don't write for no reason. There's always a goal, an intended effect. And some of those common purposes are to inform, convince, question, define, argue, to elicit an emotional response, to call someone to action. And when thinking about that specific purpose in mind, and really all all writing at its heart is at some point some sort of argument or a means of entering the communication realm. So where does this fit in with rhetorical analysis? Well, how an author accomplishes their purpose is a rhetorical strategy. And no matter how long or how short a text is, there are usually more than one rhetorical strategies that the author uses. So think about it like this, my dears. You guys know what these strategies are. You just don't know what the writing world calls them or defines them. You guys use these strategies all the time when you write for your own purposes. Some common rhetorical strategies or rhetorical devices include exemplification, cause and effect, classification, division, comparison, contrast, definition, description, narration, and figurative language. There is an extensive list of these kind of rhetorical strategies or rhetorical devices in Canvas, but I kind of wanted to just go over them a little bit here. It won't take too terribly long. So, exemplification. It's a fancy way of saying giving examples. And it is the most frequently used rhetorical strategy because it's the fundamental way an author can illustrate or support or clarify ideas by referring to a sample, a detail, a person, an event. Think about it. How many times in your own writing have you said, for example? I just did it. That's what I mean when you use rhetorical devices or rhetorical strategies all the time in your own writing. The second most popular or most widely used rhetorical strategy is comparison contrast. And when we think about comparison contrast, we really focus on either the similarities or differences of something to prove a point. So another rhetorical strategy is cause and effect, where, at the very, very high risk of sounding like a math teacher, which I am not, I don't math. Cause and effect is describing that as a result of A, B occurs. It's when you link a topic, where you link topic A and B along some sort of timeline. So, for example, in the article that we read for this week, Why America is Self-Segregating, Dana Boyd says that the cause of our growing self-segregation is the evolution and development of the internet and social media. So because of the internet and social media, the effect of that is that we are growing more self-segregated. So that is an example of cause and effect as a rhetorical strategy. Another rhetorical strategy is definition. And you guys know that, I mean, and think about when you were in, I don't know if they still do this, but when I was in elementary school, middle school, wherever, we had vocabulary that we had to look up in the dictionary. And you know that when we define a word, it means it gives the word meaning. And authors can use two types of definition when using it as a rhetorical strategy. It can be denotative or objective, is acting like a dictionary, like the actual factual real definition of a word. Or it can be connotative or subjective. And by that, I mean it gives a personal meaning or relationship with the word. So, for example, an example of, I've chosen the word hippie. And the denotative or the dictionary, the literal definition, the objective definition, is a person of unconventional appearance, long hair, associated with the subculture, rejection of conventional values, and the taking of hallucinogenic drugs. Yes, the LSD. That is the denotative. That is how the dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, defines the word hippie. However, the connotative or a personal meaning to this particular author is that a hippie means approaching life's obstacles in a way to promote freedom, peace, love, and respect for our earth and all of mankind. So note, both of these are definitions, but one is denotative, one is connotative, and both of them, depending on how you look at it, are correct. So that is an example of definition. Think about it like this. When part of writing is being able to define terms of how you're going to use those terms, and definition is one of those strategies. Another strategy or rhetorical technique is description, where you describe something, where you recreate a person, place, thing that appeals to the author, the senses. And a description can be either informative or impressionistic or evocative. It evokes something, it evokes feeling. And an informative description is factual, practical, to the point. So, for example, if I were going to describe my husband to you, I would say that he is 5'9", has brown hair, brown eyes, and is of average build, right? That's an informative, to the point, factual description. But if I wanted to give you a more evocative or impressionistic, a more subjective description that appeals to a reader's sense, intellect, or emotions, I would say he has eyes that are like hot chocolate, or his voice is like, velvet or something like that. It is describing him, but it's appealing more to your senses or your emotions as a reader. So they basically say the same thing, but they approach it in a different way. And depending on the effect you want, if you want to appeal more to logic, you would go for a more informative description. If you wanted to appeal to kind of the pathos or the emotion, you would give more of an evocative, impressionistic description. Another rhetorical strategy is narrative. And it's basically when you retell a story or an event with a particular time frame or specific purpose. And it can, think about it like this. Every time, how many times have you read something or written something where you provided an anecdote? It doesn't matter how long a narrative is. It can be something short, sweet, and simple and to the point, or it can be a complete presentation throughout the entirety of the text. But narratives typically appeal to people's emotions. Another example is figurative language, and this kind of ties back into that description category, because a lot of times these strategies and techniques overlap with one another. And you guys know that the figurative language is the use of language to appeal to the senses. And I know that you guys are familiar with similes and metaphors, these comparisons of dissimilar things to make a point. So I'm not going to go over them, but some common and popular examples of figurative language are allusion and diction. And allusion is essentially a brief reference to a person, place, event, or passage in a work of literature or the Bible. And the thing that is so great about allusion is that the author of the text assumes that it's recognized well enough by the reader to get the point. So if I said, it's been raining so much these last couple of days, I thought I was going to have to build an ark. And of course, that's an allusion to the Bible and Noah's Ark and building a boat to kind of escape from the flood. But allusion is a great example of a rhetorical device or a rhetorical strategy because it allows the reader to make connections based on something that may be unfamiliar with something that is familiar. Diction is an author's choice of words, and it's tied to an author's tone. And depending on the words that an author used, it depends on the effect that it's going to have on the audience. So it kind of diction, choice of words, conveys an author's view of truth to the reader. So for example, reformist kind of has this kind of positive connotation, and it's very different than the word extremist, and they're kind of synonymous with each other, but one has more of a positive versus negative effect. So if I was calling somebody a reformist, the truth of my view would be that I feel kind of I am supportive of this person, versus if I said that they were an extremist, it would seem that I was disapproving. Leader, same thing with leader versus tyrant. Leader, it seems that I have a pretty positive, supportive view of a particular person, versus a tyrant, where it would be more of a tone of disapproval. So diction and word choice really kind of, and people choose words specifically because they do convey a certain effect on an audience. Other strategies that can be defined as rhetorical techniques are rhetorical question, where you ask your reader directly a question, not to get a direct answer, but to get them to start thinking about it as they read through a text, classifying and dividing where you group similar things together, or you look at things that seem to be similar but then show their differences. So take a look at the rhetorical techniques overview in your Canvas shell. And the thing that I'm asking you guys to do for this week is to look at Dana Boyd's article, Why America is Self-Segregating, and kind of come up with or point to some of the rhetorical strategies she uses in order to create her argument. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and don't stress out. This is going to get easier because we're going to be applying these strategies and these techniques to other articles that we read in the class for this unit. So let me know if you guys have any questions.